welcome to this conversation today. What we're going to go through is a little bit, what is the Swiss Leading House, or the Swiss Leading House for Africa? Why did we build this instrument? What are we trying to achieve? And also how you should apply, and a little bit on how we'll actually select. A little note on risks. We have, some people have already applied or begun the application, but I'd like you to have a look at the risks profile again and think about that. We'll have a brief moment for matchmaking, but I would also sort of suggest that you do that outside this meeting as well, and then we'll be open for questions. If you have questions as we go through, put them in the chat. I will probably ignore them just because it'll be easier to sort of keep going on between my screens. But please put them in the chat so that we can come back to them at the end. So I do want to have questions. It's just that I won't be able to manage to get to all of them, I think, if we're stopping and starting. So a little bit about what is the Swiss Leading House for Africa. We are a number of tools that are grants that are used to promote collaboration between Switzerland and Sub-Saharan Africa. We're funded by the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation, but the administrators of that is actually the University of Basel and the Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute, which is now called the Swiss TPH. And we administer the Swiss Leading House on behalf of the Swiss government. So we have institutional roles, but we're really representing all of Switzerland here. What we're trying to do in terms of priorities is really just improve knowledge around the education, research and innovation opportunities between Switzerland and Sub-Saharan Africa. So we want to get Swiss researchers excited about the opportunity of Africa. We want to make sure that researchers and innovators in Africa think about Switzerland as well. We also strengthen institutions directly. So we just directly support some institutions like the Ifigara Health Institute under this program. And then the other thing we want to do is support science-based entrepreneurship. And today's grant, the Research Sciencepreneur Partnership Grant or Collaboration Grant, is a little bit between the two. So it's between entrepreneurship and sort of research, and we'll explain that a bit later. We have 5 grants, which I'll go through in a moment. And we also try and work with collaboration activities beyond just those grants. So we help people to find partners. We encourage visits from partner countries. We try and connect to other mechanisms. And we do what we can to sort of promote collaborations in the region. In terms of the instruments, which is sort of how we would actually support you as individuals, we have 5 instruments. The first is a research partnership grant. This is between 15 to 40,000 Swiss francs. They gave away was about 70 in the end, I think, that were applied last year. So that call's actually called for the whole period, and you'll see that in the calendar in a minute. We also have prolonged research days and PhD programs. So the prolonged research day supports Swiss researchers to do knowledge sharing and co-design collaborations in an African country. And then there's also PhD programs, which are sort of tend to be 2 to 3 week schools on a particular focus. And then academia or industry training is for research-based entrepreneurs. And we have partnerships where South African, for example, some South African partners would come to Switzerland. We have Swiss entrepreneurs going to, they were in Ghana last year, also in South Africa, and where they explore the opportunity of market entry and also collaboration. And when I explain how we came up with the Research Sciencepreneur Collaboration Grant, that'll be a little bit clearer. And then today's topic, which is the Research Sciencepreneur Collaboration Grant. In terms of timings, as I said, the research partnership grants were out last year. We also had an academia industry training last year. There was a clean tech call in Ghana, and we will be doing a blockchain call in South Africa shortly, and we will also be having some other calls later in the year. In terms of the Research Sciencepreneur Collaboration Grant, I'm hoping we'll have enough applications in this round that we will call. If we don't have enough applications, then we will also have that again in 2027. I'll stop there for a moment and just see if there are any questions that have come up in the chat. People have added their LinkedIn profiles. That's great. Super. Okay. Anyone want to raise their hand with questions now, or should we jump into why we actually built the Research Sciencepreneur Collaboration Grant? I think I will jump ahead then. Okay. So this is the story of one of the startups that we supported at various times with support from within the Swiss Learning House for Africa, and also in among sort of more sort of Team Switzerland approaches. And what we realized with this company, which, by the way, shout out to Thomas and Leonie, who I think will be listening to the webinar, is that they've, through this process, Breathe Medical doesn't exist anymore. They've now pivoted to be a training company called UpLeap, which came about because they had the opportunity to have multiple visits to multiple interactions with researchers, potential customers, and others in their target market of Africa. So what we realized was, okay, there needs to be, yes, they were able to successfully get some feedback, and it has to be more than one. So we have to think about, how do we have multiple interactions? So one partnership grant, one research grant isn't enough. One visit isn't enough. We need to think about, how do we actually work together? And then this is an example that we actually funded in the last period, where a researcher from, a science-based startup from Ghana called Duplex Bioscience contacted us and spoke about some of the opportunities around surveillance and the topic of antimicrobial resistance. They had an idea that made sense to combine with Diaxo, which was a Swiss company that had some interesting PCR technology. And then they worked together with Noguchi Institute in Ghana to develop an opportunity to look at a way of doing community-based sampling and AMR surveillance using Swiss technology. So there's a benefit for the Swiss technology and also the startup in Ghana. So that's like thinking, like some of this stuff is sort of working quite well. But what's good about it? And then 2 years ago, we had a blockchain startup who went to South Africa, and they work on improved GPS provision. So rather than your GPS saying that you're a meter away, it can say you're 10 centimeters away from something. And their most interesting moments were actually working with Stellenbosch University and looking at how they could help researchers at Stellenbosch to actually improve their research. So we're hearing a number of times that the really interesting collaboration is not a Swiss startup going directly into the market in an African country, but it's actually working with research partners. And when we sort of look back at Switzerland and ourselves, it's kind of obvious, actually. So it's a little bit embarrassing we didn't start this way, but this is how we think about the day job of the Innovation Office at the University of Basel. So we're between the knowledge ecosystems, so that's the research world, and then on the sort of the blue dots, that's the sort of the business world. So if you think of large companies or large procurers or whatever like that, that are either selling things or using a lot of products. That's the sort of the business ecosystem. And then there's the innovation ecosystem, which is startups and growing companies. And at the innovation office at a university, you're sort of sitting in between these things. You're between the research and the innovation. You're also sort of doing work with larger businesses. So that's sort of naturally where an innovation office sits. And when we think about how research goes to innovation, I'll mute people for a moment. Let's check that I myself have not been muted. Yeah, great. But if you look at this, the way that sort of tech transfer doesn't just go great research idea becomes a startup. That's the end. What actually happens is that there are collaborations between researchers and startups, and the startup will go back into the research world and get stronger. And that's really one of the things that we know and understand is an important part of sort of the Swiss secret sauce. And we actually have, an explicit grant opportunity in Switzerland called the Bridge Grant, which really does sort of stand between a startup and research. And when, well, let's skip that one. But also when we think here in Switzerland around other international collaborations with the United Kingdom, South Korea, we explicitly do calls between startups and researchers between those sort of separate countries or regions. So that's why we said, let's do something that tries to bridge that gap and helps startups to connect to researchers in both directions. And that's how we came up with the idea of the Research Sciencepreneur Collaboration Grant. We want to bridge that divide. We want to help startups on both in Africa and also in Switzerland to find a way to work with researchers to make their product better or service and be catalytic in such a way that partnership lets you find more funding, make you more reliable, more believable, connect to the government, connect to customers, whatever that is. We're hoping that sort of that catalyzes that action. What we want that to be is there should be a researcher on one side and a sciencepreneur on the other. And we use the term sciencepreneur. What we really mean is a science-based startup. The startup should be founded. It doesn't have to be. So but you do have to have evidence of entrepreneurship and actually wanting to have impact with your work. The grant, like I said, is between 5,000 to 20,000 Swiss francs. It needs to be matched or at least some co-funding from the African partner. That can be in kind. If it's from a third party or something else, better. If it's cash, also good. But there does need to be a sharing of intent and sort of skin in the game from both sides. What we can imagine happening, it can be prototyping, it could be it could be physical research, it could be a co-design workshop, it could be let's go and meet some customers together, it could be some training for people to understand your product or give feedback. Like it's something that should move the trajectory of the startup forward together with researchers. we're being deliberately open. It's the first time we're doing it. We want to see what happens. Selection will be jury-based. There's a little bit more about that in a moment. Like I said, we're open until the end of August to do that. So how to apply is the obvious next question. And I'm just having a look in the chat to see if there are questions other than people putting in who they are and what they are talking about. No, it looks like people are adding their people, which is great. So how to apply? You should go to websuccess.com, RSCG-2026 apply. This is it will look like. Here is the application, and oh, sorry, no, I have actually, no, anyway, sorry, we'll just keep saying the presentation. And if anyone has questions where we need to have a look at the website, we can go through that. What you need to apply, the first thing is the application needs to be led by the Swiss partner. The rules of that we get from SERI mean that the cash has to be paid out to a Swiss partner. So you need to have a Swiss partner before you begin the application. On the other hand, you also need an African partner, so you need both to get started. I would suggest the second thing you do is look at the risks of what you're thinking of doing, and then the budget, and then the contract, and if they all make sense, make a video, do the application. And that's the order that, like I said, that I'd do it in. In terms of how we'll select, we'll do a jury selection. And we're going to be looking at sort of four main things. One, partnership quality. Is there, if you've been working together for some time, that's great. But if you haven't been working there, have you clearly defined roles? Is it clear that you're complementary? Have you got shared ownership across regions? Have you had the conversations already that make it clear that this partnership is going to work? And there's a bit more on that in the risk section. Then innovation and relevance, like is what you're doing actually interesting? Like is the startup going to be worth building when you build it? And then we want to see that it's building on research, and we want to believe that the startup is actually going to be able to do it. And then the feasibility is really the feasibility of the plan you have. Does it make sense? Is it possible? Is the budget appropriate? And then the last thing is two sort of things that are a little bit in tension with each other. The first one is there a pathway to follow on funding? So is there a believable way that this can succeed? And the second point is this going to make a difference? So is this partnership going to succeed anyway, or does this funding actually help? So that will be sort of the two questions. So is there a pathway afterwards, and is this funding helping the partnership to get there? A comment on selection: it is competitive. We will rank people from 1 to however many. If we expect to give sort of 10 to 15 away in this cycle, if we get loads of really good applications, we will actually probably use the 2027 money now and sort of close it and finish it. So if you're thinking about apply. If you can't get a competitive, if you don't think you can get a competitive application in the next 2 months, then don't do it. It will be a competitive grant where we expect to be selecting sort of either 10 to 15, or even better, will be 20 to 30 fantastic projects that are making a big difference. To give you an idea, our research partnership grants, we have like I think a couple of hundred applications that sort of fulfill the criteria. So we might not have that many, but we sort of expect certainly sort of have 100 or so at least. Which isn't to scare you off, it's just sort of be realistic and things, and don't go spend the money before you've got it. A note on risks. For some of you who've had a look at the application before, I've just updated with a risk assessment. This was after conversations with the research partnership team and some of our other partners here in Switzerland. The first question now on the application is a risk self-assessment. This is not a hard filter, but it is important that the lead applicant and the applicants actually fill this in and have the discussions around how will you make decisions? Have you shared your goals? Are your institutions ready to take that, etc.? So have a look at that, and you want to have had those conversations certainly before sort of the middle of August. So you can't have these conversations on the 29th of August and make the application. So the first thing I do after this call is to download that from the application website and have a look at it and think, okay, can I have those conversations with my partners? Matchmaking. A few of you have put your details in the chat, which is great. You can also add them onto the fsuccess.com comment section, and people could pick that up. I would suggest that you do some targeted outreach if you're not sure. You can contact me. I may not give a good answer. And if I get busy, I definitely won't give a good answer. So I would, and the only reason that I'll be better than you having a good look on the web is because I may know someone and I only know so many people. So I would really suggest that, you know, the first thing is you thinking about who's your circle of contacts that could help. And then second of all, just do in the old days, it would be a Google search. Nowadays, it's about, you know, your favorite large language model, and sort of asking, you know, intelligent questions about what is it that you're trying to do and what does someone look like that could potentially be a partner. That is all I had for today, or at least now. I've got two last slides, but we could jump to questions now if you would like. So I will have a look in the chat for any questions, or if anyone has questions, put your hand up or just unmute and ask them. Hello, Juliet. Welcome. I hope I told the story of Upleap correctly.
Hello. Yes, it sounded good from my end.
Good. Great. Do we have any other questions? Is everyone clear on the grant? Clear on the application process? Anything else? Faith.
Yes, thank you very much. Faith from Nairobi, Kenya.
Hi.
Mine is, you can hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. So about the startup, do we have like how old should the startup be? Do we have a limit of the years? Should it be a recent one, or do you have limited years? How old should it be? Yeah.
Should be. There is no hard limit
Okay.
on the startup. If they're less than 3 years, it's definitely okay. If they're more than 3 years, I think we'd sort of have a bit of a look at it and things. If it's a Kenyan startup, we'd probably be, or if it's coming from the African side, we will be probably more lenient than from the Swiss side.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just a general comment there. I think that comes down to, do we believe that the startup can make a difference, and do we believe that this will actually make the grant itself will make a difference? And if the startup's been going for a long period of time, then it's sort of be like, oh, like, is this going to make any difference? We'll begin to question, does that make any difference? And or if the startup has been going for a long period of time, has a reasonable customer base, significant revenue, etc., then we'd say to them, hey, happy for you to find partners and whatever, but how about you do some matching funding or something like that? That's sort of how we would do it. So the question, key eligibility criteria for African researchers or sciencepreneurs. So the criteria is for the partnership. That's the sort of, so what I described there is the partnership. In terms of, can an early stage academic project apply? It has to be impact focused. So there has to be a path to translation. So if it's an early stage academic project where you're really still asking academic questions, this is not the right grant, because the project that's applying should be taking the role of the startup or the sciencepreneur. So you shouldn't be asking another researcher to help you with research questions. You should be thinking, this is the product I have or the service I'm thinking about. How will a researcher help to boost it? How many counterparts are allowed within the project? There's no hard limit. The world just gets more complicated the more you have. The minimum is a one Swiss, one African, one researcher, one sciencepreneur. That's it. If you bring on other partners, they need to have a reason, because it just makes it more complicated. And yeah, that's what I would say. It may be that you may bring in a counterpart to help with matching effort. That's another way to think about it. So so in terms of funding, think about also ease of administration and things. You don't want to be sort of paying out to multiple people. Is it just for the health sector? Absolutely not. It's everything. It can be a digital humanities question. It can be carbon removal. It can be anything. Yeah. It could be a fintech company. Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Niels.
Just following up on that one quickly. Thanks so much, Douglas. I was just wondering whether you're also supporting like a market supporting projects and research. So, for example, comparing different kind of products, or is it, do you prefer projects that are really trying to improve the startups? That's their main product.
So both are okay, but it would have to be, so hey, my product, so Niels, an example would be, hey, I have this product, it works already in Switzerland or works already in Kenya. I want to compare it to these two other projects, these two other competitors, which will mean that I'll understand either I have a market or I don't, or you'll understand I need to go and develop and things like that. Would be an acceptable project. Yeah.
Thank you.
And it doesn't mean it'll win, but it would be acceptable. Like it wouldn't be on the knockout criteria. Question 2, Swiss partners, 1 Kenyan. Yes. Yeah. As long as at least one of them is a researcher and one of them is a startup, then that's fine. Pierre, questions of project fields. I think I've answered that already, which is anything, but please let me know if that didn't answer your question by asking the question again or some other thing. Okay. All right. In terms of what I would do, I will add a somewhat edited summary of people's details, and I will put them on the fsuccess.com platform so people can have a look at them there. And then I will slightly edit this webinar recording and then share it with people. All right. Any other questions? No. Okay, great. The evaluation will depend a little bit on things. Before we will go through and tell when applications are made and they are not eligible, we will go through and do that as soon as possible. So if you finalize an application now, then in a week or two, I will go through and say, okay, this application doesn't work because you don't have X, or something like that. So that sort of first knockout will be quite quick, depending a little bit on the number of applications. I intend for the jury period to be about 2 weeks, so people can have a look at least at least 3 jury members will have seen every project, and then we will meet, hash it out for an hour or two, and then finish it. So certainly by the end of September we will have an answer. I will be aiming to do it earlier than that. Ampera.
Yes, Douglas. Thank you for the session. My question is, since we are sharing content and in hopes for partnerships, so what if it turns out that I end up having a lot of partnerships, and can I be a candidate in several applications?
You can. I would sort of ask the question if you have the capacity to do all of them, because that will be a question that we would have. And so I have no idea, Ampera, whether you're a startup or a researcher, but if you're a startup and you're wanting to do.
Yes, we are a startup from Namibia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Think about whether you have the capacity, and if you do apply twice, then don't try and hide it and assume we'll miss it. Actually sort of say, hey, we're applying for 2, and this is why we have the capacity to do both. We may ignore. We may sort of disagree with you, and then we'll sort of tell that and say, hey, you know, 2 great applications, we think you should only do one of them, and this is what we do. Like that could happen. But yeah, that's how to do. But I'm hoping you have the problem of too many partners.
All right, thank you.
Swiss research institution with a Swiss startup with an office in Africa. It depends what you mean by an office. It would have to be an entity in Africa there, and I think we'd be wanting to see clear connection into the African ecosystem. So our interest is not to sort of you know, support you know, a Swiss research institution talking with itself. It should really be sort of making connections with that are relevant is there. So I would say maybe Nathan is the answer on a Swiss institution with a Swiss startup with an office. Like, I think you'd want to be pretty clear on why that's sort of valuable. All right. Then I would, people can keep thinking of questions for another few seconds. I will just share a couple of things. One is other ways to keep in touch, sort of connect to Team Switzerland. So the presentation will be available to everyone who registered. So you can see the links here, or you can just Google it. In terms of interesting ways to keep in touch and sort of connect to Team Switzerland, there is a thing called the Swiss Government Excellence Scholarships. These are opportunities for PhDs and postdocs globally. But there are, I think, 30 in the budget for African countries. So this is an opportunity to have your PhD in Switzerland funded. That is open now, I think. I'll say it's open now, and the deadline is August 20th. It may be it opens on August 20th, in which case you will have an excellent application ready by then. But have a look at that. If you or people in your network are interested in doing a PhD in Switzerland. My hope is if you're an African researcher, you find a Swiss partner, or if you're an African startup, you build a company rather than doing a PhD here. But certainly people in your network should know about that. The other is the call we're talking about. The other thing that I would also just remind you is that you are both people, everybody on this call is eligible for most types of Horizon Europe and EU funding. So you can apply for that. So if you have, you know, a great partnership through this grant, or you find a new friend through this process, you can continue with EU funding. So have a look at those things, including EIC, Eurostars. There's a bunch of things there that are worth looking at. We're on LinkedIn. Look up Swiss Leading House for Africa. Follow there. If you'd like to be on our email list, then write an email with "keep me updated" in the title to lhafrica@swisstph.ch. And then one last one is a program that is being started, not under the Swiss Leading House brand, but here at the University of Basel, together with the University of Stellenbosch and further partners. And we are working to help build translational projects in neglected tropical diseases. So if you are working in that field, if you know people working in that field, please apply with your project. You can go to sparkntd.org, or you can see the QR code there. If you happen to be a researcher and mentor, then please apply there as a mentor. But that's another thing that we're doing. So we've just launched, so we're sort of spreading the message. That's all from me today. I'll just leave it there. I'll just check one last time. Any more questions? Okay, great. We have been almost Swiss timing. We're 1 minute over time, but I think that's okay. So thank you, everybody. And I'm looking forward to some really great applications, and having a jury have a tough time actually selecting. Like I said, your best bet is to look at your own network, grow from there to find partners. If not, look around and see what's available by Google search, or more modern search techniques. I may help, but it's unlikely. I'm sure that there are other people that can help. So thanks very much, and have a good rest of your day. I'll stop the recording.